Good morning. It's great to be here. There's so many people in the crowd here, and I hope to meet every single one of you during my time here. So we're going to do a little switcheroo with the machines here and get started. So this talk is titled, Do We Possess the Intelligence to Design Artificial Intelligence? And really, what I want you to be thinking about during this talk is actually, do you possess the intelligence to design artificial intelligence? I don't think I have the intelligence to do this well, but I'm going to work on it. I think I need to get better at it because it's going to be important to my career to know how to do this well. I lost my clicker. There it is. So about 200 years ago, phrenology was a thing. This was psychologists thinking there are locations in the brain that help explain the mind, help explain human behavior. And part of that has withstood the 200 years. We still think this is probably true. There's locations in the mind. The back of the brain is responsible for vision, these types of things, right? There's location that's relevant. What they didn't have right was that they were measuring the skull, the cranium, to sort of understand this phenomenon. That was not right. But the notion that there's these capabilities, there's these organs inside of our brain that can do very specialized things. So maybe there's cautiousness, consciousness. There was another good one, appropriateness. Kind of interesting concepts. These are things that people are capable of doing. The problem is, I think we still don't really understand the human mind very well. We don't, and when I say we, I really mean everyone. But in our field, in the design field, I think we have lost touch with what we understand about the mind and how the brain works. So we're relatively smart, but we have limitations. We have super capabilities, but I think we need to understand those capabilities better, especially as we design these smarter machines. So what else is happening in the world? Well, there's a massive business opportunity around artificial intelligence, machine learning, using and collecting lots and lots and lots of data to make these systems smarter. In the AI space, just to elaborate on this, we're thinking about smart cities, and that's connecting almost everything that we encounter to make them smarter, to be able to use them to do things. I actually think all of these things here that we talk about as business opportunities, this is about experience. This is about designing things for people. So businesses are investing here. They don't seem to invest as much in human intelligence, but they're investing in artificial intelligence, machine learning. So in this talk, my hope is to enrich your understanding of human intelligence in order to be able to be set up to do to design better AI systems, with the purpose of making these systems benefit people, right? Okay, so this is my dear friend Masuma Henry, and she was supposed to be giving this talk at this time, or actually 45 minutes ago. And she's a wonderful person. She's an exceptional designer, research strategist. She and I worked together at Microsoft. She couldn't be here because there was an illness in the family, so she asked if I would step in on her behalf, which I'm happy to do. At the same time, I didn't feel great about it because I think it's important to hear from women at these kind of events. I think it's a voice that doesn't get heard as often as it should. So I'm going to try to do my best to speak about the things I think she would speak about in a way that she would care about. So I'll try my best. Now, she looks very kind and sweet here, but the reality is it's not always that pleasant. She can really get after you if you tick her off. However, if you maintain some defensive weapons, maybe a knife, something like that, you can get through the conversation. So, Masuma is now at Amazon. I have no idea what she's doing there, but she just joined there maybe a few weeks ago. I want to talk about Amazon for a little bit because I said I'd speak on her behalf. So check out these shoes. I think this is a really cool shoe. It's one of the first fixed track spike shoes. You see at the bottom, those spikes are actually fixed onto the sole of that shoe. So Onitsuka is a Japanese man who started the company. He started the company in 1949 to create shoes. So his thing was, this was to promote youth health through sport. So he started in 1949. In 1964, they came out with these shoes, which I like. Then in 1966, this is the Onitsuka Tiger for the pre-trials of the Mexico 1966 time trials. And now available on Amazon, here's the 66. Now available on Amazon is this gem. Beautiful shoe. Beautiful shoe. So I wanted this shoe. Now, I order it. I order a size 9. 2 days later, shows up on my doorstep. I open it up. I get a size 5. Not a 9, a 5. So right away, what do? I think I ordered the wrong size. Of course. So I go back, I look. I didn't order the wrong size. I ordered a 9. They gave me a 5. Well, I've ordered from Amazon many times before, and nothing has really gone wrong. They're quite reliable in giving me the things that I asked for. But I got the wrong size. So now, what am I thinking went wrong? What happened? So there's sellers, that sell inventory. Amazon does fulfillment. I've heard that there's fancy robotics and sophisticated equipment that ships things, takes things off the shelf. So I don't know where the problem was, but I got the wrong size. So I say, well, I'll try again. I try again. And this time I don't get a 9 like I asked for. I got a 6. Getting closer, yeah? A few sizes closer. But how long is this going to take? Is it going to have to take another week to get each size until I get the 9? So I was like, this has not happened before. Amazon's really good. Maybe it's the store, the people who are selling the shoes. And you can't get this shoe anywhere else except these guys. So I email them through the Amazon, and they say, that wasn't us. That was Amazon. You got to call them. So I call Amazon. Who calls it? Has anyone ever called Amazon? Nobody calls Amazon. So I call Amazon. They're like, that wasn't us either. Well, it was probably the seller. So a few days go by, and I'm still like, I don't know. Do I really want this shoe? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get it. So I order it again, and I get a 9. I finally get a 9. Third time. So that was great. Happy with the shoe. Wore it for a week. I go to Rio, and I left it in Rio before coming here. Son of a gun. So I lost it. You know how shitty I feel after all that, and then I lost the damn shoes? So this is being human, isn't it? We come to conclusions about, I did something wrong. I got the wrong size. And then I got it, and then I lost it? This is horrible. Okay, so the Onitsuka was the name of the company before it was ASICS. And I didn't know this, but in Latin, anima sana and corpora sano translates to sound mind, sound body. And those are ASINCS, ASICS. If you don't know or learn anything from this talk, I taught you this. Guess you probably didn't know that. Thank you very much. Okay. So the next chapter of my talk is about capabilities and limitations around human intelligence. So I read this book, Thinking Fast and Slow, written by Daniel Kahneman, winner of Nobel Prize in something important. And this was a very difficult book for me to read. I think it took me about 5 years to get through it. I would read about a page and a half, and I'd lose interest, and I'd come back maybe a month later, pick it up, get a little further. And it's pretty dense for me to understand it. And what he's doing is he's looking back on his entire body of research that he's done. He's a psychologist, and he is and an economist, and sort of the overall sort of smart kind of person. So he's summarizing a lot of his research and research from the psychology field and trying to explain all of it. Most of his work is around decision-making and making judgments, okay? So what I want to do, since it took me 5 years to read that book, I'm going to do a little book report and hope that you can learn some things from me. Okay. So the main thing that he tries to get across in his book is that there's a two systems model of the mind. Okay? Two systems. The first system is fast. We'll call that system 1. And the second system is slow. We'll call that system 2. So system 1, what it can do is it can operate automatically. It's quick, little effort, no sense of voluntary control. That's a little dangerous, but fun. And an example of system 1 working is that the mind can detect one object is more distant than another. I can see the lights down at the end of the stage are further away than this speaker here. That happens automatically. The slow system, it's controlled. It's not wild. It allocates attention. It's effortful in thinking through activities. It can do complex things. And so here, let's say a complex thing might be comparing two washing machines. You want to understand which one to buy. That's system 2 at work. Okay, here's the first puzzle of a few puzzles that I'm going to give you. What do the 3 boxes or exhibit have in common? Think about this for a couple seconds. Okay. So maybe you imagine there's some A, B's, and C's on the left. Anne approached the bank. 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. Anne approached the bank. Maybe Anne is going to a bank. Maybe the bank is ABC. She's got an account, number 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. She's going to get some money. Something like that, maybe. It's super ambiguous, intended to be ambiguous. Yeah? What happened? Did you see that the B is the same shape as the 13? Did you pick up on that? It's easy to overlook. How come this isn't a 13? How come this isn't A13C? And that's 12B14? There's a bank that has money. There's the bank along a river. The sides of the river is a bank. Did you think about a river bank? Not likely, unless you were maybe recently at a river, then maybe that would have stuck with you. So what the mind can do is jump to conclusions. It uses the context that's available to make those conclusions. So the B is a B because it's by A and C, yeah? The 13 is a 13 and not a B because it's by 1, 2, and 1, 4. Context, that's the context. So what the mind can do is neglect the ambiguity. And there's tons of ambiguity. I made up a story that is believable, but so we are really good at suppressing doubt, jumping to conclusions. We have a great machine between our ears for jumping to conclusions. Okay, so related to this is you're rarely stumped. Someone asks you a question, you're rarely stumped. System 1 never is stumped. System 2, maybe you can stump it. System 1 is not stumped often. You'll have intuitive feelings and emotions about things. You have answers to questions you don't really understand. If I asked you, how does electricity work? You'd give me an answer. You'd give me an answer. Many of you don't understand how electricity works to some depth, yeah? So we're really good at this. You could say this is a strength. This is a capability that's really powerful for us. Maybe it's a weakness. Maybe it's a limitation. Okay, so here's what can happen. We like to answer these easier questions, and we do this because we're substituting questions that we can answer for the ones that we cannot. And so these questions on the left, how much would you contribute to save an endangered species? You might not answer that. You might sort of reform that into, well, how much emotion do I feel when I think about dying dolphins? Yeah? Maybe the dolphins is what you really care about. And so that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you I'm going to contribute a ton to endangered species. But I'm thinking about the dying dolphins. I care about the dying dolphins. So what Kahneman's talking about is we're good at substituting questions. During the Q&A, I will demonstrate how to substitute questions. And as you listen to other speakers throughout the time, politicians are super at substituting questions. But it's not necessarily always that we're trying to get around it. We're just looking for an easier question that we know how to answer. I hope you guys are buying this. Okay, so here's some more research. The research that was of interest to these psychologists was, is there any correlation to the number of dates that young people have gone on to being happier? If you go on more dates, are you happier? So group 1 is asked these questions in this order. How happy are you these days? You don't know what the next question is going to be. Say, I'm pretty good. Feel all right. How many dates have you had in the last month? 1, 2. 2. One wasn't that great. The other one was okay. It's fine. So there was no correlation when the questions were presented in this order. In group 2, the order of the questions was changed. First question was, how many dates did you have last month? I had 1. Ugh, 1? And how happy are you these days? I'm miserable. What are you talking about? I had 1 date. So this is an example of substituting the questions, yeah? So I'm answering an easier question. I've been kind of primed. You set me up. You manipulating my moods, and then you ask me this question. So there's this mood heuristic. So this is psychology, people. Do we understand this? Are we smart enough about how the mind works? I like this one. I hope you do too. So a study of the incidence of kidney cancer in the counties. There's apparently 41 counties in the United States. So the study is focused on how common is it for kidney cancer to exist in these counties. Yeah? There's a remarkable pattern. You want to know what it is? Yeah? Okay. So the counties in which the incidence of kidney cancers is lowest are mostly rural, sparsely populated, located in the traditionally Republican states of the Midwest, the South, and the West. What do you make of this? To yourself, think about this a little bit. What do you make of this? So maybe you're thinking clean, rural living, beautiful countryside, maybe healthier food, there's no air pollution, no water pollution, it's pristine out in the rural areas. Maybe that's an explanation. Did the Republicans, did their health policies maybe lead to this low incident rate of kidney cancer? Could that have been the cause? Their policies usually don't support a lot of good health options, so maybe that one's dubious. So this might have been your train of thought, yeah? I'm giving you this information, and you're starting to parse it out and think it through and come to a conclusion. We've got a machine for coming to conclusions. So check this out. The counties in which the incidence of kidney cancers is highest are also mostly rural, sparsely populated, located in Republican states in the Midwest, the South, the West. So you get that? The lowest is here, and the highest incident rate is in small rural counties. How do you explain this? When I was reading this, I had no idea. I thought it had something to do with the information that was provided to me. So what happens is small samples yield extreme results more often than large samples do, yeah? So system one is adept at these causal connections. It's trying to come to a conclusion. And it's difficult for our minds to understand and think about information that's not available to us. Kahneman talks about what you see is all there is. And this is what happened to me. As I'm looking through those stats, I'm thinking, you told me it's rural, you told me it's this and that, I'm going to use that information, I'm going to draw a conclusion. And then you do a little switcheroo on me and say, the highest is also that. Well, now I can't have both of my conclusions exist at the same time. The problem was a sampling problem. We sampled from these small populations. They had extreme results. The thing that was presented had nothing to do with it. So now we're back to the drawing board to figure out what's causing the incident rate of kidney cancer. Isn't that cool? This is the mind. This is the mind. Okay. A few more problems. So luck contributes to success. We see it a lot on the golf course. There can be really talented players playing at the highest level, super skilled, and one person, the ball just drops in, and they win the whole shooting match, yeah? Pretty interesting to see how luck, or is it skill, that affects the outcomes of these games. Okay. So a little more thinking I'd like you to do, if you can stick with me. So imagine you got two players that are going to play a round of golf. And in the first round, player one scores a 66. This is an exceptional golf score. In general, this is a low score, which means low is good, yeah? Player two scores a 77. This is not as good. This is, for a professional at the PGA level, not that great. So my question to you is, what scores do you think are going to happen in round two? So let's start with player one, who got a 66, exceptional. is their score going to be lower, the same, or higher in round 2? Same question for player 2. So think about this for a second. Come up with an answer. Lower, the same, higher. We don't really know. We have one data point for each player. But let's say the results turn out to be this. Round 2, player 1 gets a 78, player 2 gets a 67. We might have thought after one round of golf, boy, player 1's exceptional. They had an exceptional score. That's a better player. But what happened in round 2? 78. They got a worse score. Player 2 got a better score. They're actually even at this point. And we can continue this through the others. How do we imagine what's going to happen? What about the 4th round? Now you got 3 data points per player. Is player 1 going to have more than 70? Do you look at the average? Yeah. And then sort of say, well, I think it'll be kind of towards the average. So regression to the mean is a statistical concept that exists. It's common in our everyday life. And it too also plays with us. Sometimes we forget that this occurs, that we regress to mediocrity. We might have an exceptional day, do really well, and then we go back to kind of our normal self. Sometimes we have a really bad day, bad performance, and we kind of come back to the middle of our capabilities. Sometimes that's skill, sometimes luck is involved, and certainly a combination of both. So regression to the mean. So here, now that I've introduced that, oh boy. Here's another problem, another regression to the mean problem. So let's say you're a sales forecaster at a department store, and you are given this information and asked to predict the store sales, each store's sales in 2018. You've been told by the experts, the economists, that there's going to be a 10% increase across the board. So maybe I want you to assume a 10% increase, but we don't know where it's going to play out in each individual store. So I want to know what you're going to forecast for each store. So if there's a 10% increase in performance across the board, do you do a 10% increase on each store and just say, that's what it's going to be? Maybe, if that's the only data you have, but if I gave you more data from before, from years prior, maybe you would take that data and you do a regression and say, this is the mean, here's maybe the mean performance, and then I'll add 10%. Or so the let's say store 1 was a low performer that year, it's likely to do better than what it did last. Same if you're a high performer, maybe it comes down a little bit. So this concept of regression to the mean, super important, lots of different contexts for human performance, whether you're playing golf, or for decision making, if you're trying to predict and forecast sales. You're offered a gamble on the toss of a coin. If the coin shows tails, you lose $100. If the coin shows heads, you win $150. So is this gamble attractive to you? Would you accept it? So if you lose, you give me $100. But if it's heads, you win $150. Kind of interesting, huh? Maybe $100, might be worth it. If this was 1,000, you willing to lose 1,000 on the toss of a coin for the opportunity to gain 1,500? 10,000? 100,000? I don't know. That's starting to get up there. So this is interesting for this reason. We have this aversion to loss, much like I talked about losing the shoes in Rio. That sucked. And so the rejection of the act is a system 2 thing. It's saying, I don't want to take that gamble. I don't want to risk the loss. But our emotional responses are generally sort of controlled by system 1. So this is more on loss aversion. So what happens is there's this diminishing sensitivity for both gains and losses, this curve. Let me explain the curve. We've got psychological value. Positive, this is great, love it. Negative, to the bottom. Gains to the right, losses to the left. So the losses loom larger than the gains. This baby over here lost something and it is unhappy, really unhappy. Baby on the right, won maybe the same amount, around the same amount, and is happy, but it's not as sad and pissed off as the child over here on the left. Loss aversion. Okay, so that's some of the stuff. That just skims the surface of what Kahneman's talking about in his book. But I think it's quite interesting. It's a good read, and I think it sheds some interesting light on how humans think, how we make decisions, the choices that we make, explains human performance, and all of it's based on science, psychological research. So as I start to think about what it is that we know about human intelligence and how the mind works, now we're asked to design some smart systems, okay? So here's an interesting quote. We don't know ourselves well enough to endow values onto infinitely powerful machines. But we try. We try, and we're going to keep trying. So I worked on Office, Microsoft Office for a number of years, and one of the versions that I worked on was Office 97. And Office 97, this was when the suite of products was coming together and there was more integration across them. There was some research that had been done by two Stanford professors, professors of communication. And they had published a book in '96, the year prior, and that book was called The Media Equation. If anyone's read it, check it out. If you haven't read it, check it out. And so their research was showing that interactions with computers are identical to real social relationships. People are polite to computers. People respond differently if the computer has a female voice versus a male voice. So there's some science, there's some interesting work, some in recent books, it all seemed legit. So Microsoft at the time they had this Bob product, if you remember that one, but Office decided to implement these assistants. Yeah? This is 20 years ago. If you don't know about the Office Assistant and how it worked, you should check it out. I don't know, this wouldn't be classified as an artificial intelligent assistant, but we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be this helper. If you don't know how to do something with any of these Office products, you can ask your assistant, and your assistant will help you. If this assistant was watching you, and you started to type something, it would knock on the screen, and it would say, I see you're writing a resume. Can I help you do that? And I'll bring the tools to you, and we'll do this collaboratively. It didn't work. It was the laughing stock of the software industry for probably 5-10 years, maybe still a laughing stock. Now, what did we get wrong? There was some decent science around we interact with these technological products like people, but this didn't work. And it didn't work. I don't know, I still don't really know why. I have some theories. I think part of it was that we were wrong a lot. We didn't have enough information. We were rude. We were tapping on the screen. I think you're doing something. So there's a bunch of things that we got wrong, and we were doing the research in the labs. We were bringing all sorts of people in, saying, hey, we've got this Office Assistant. Try to do some things with it and see how it rolls. People used it, seemed to make sense. It helped them out in a lot of situations, but the public ate it up in a bad way. So not a success in sort of a smart assistant kind of way 20 years ago. This is the Nightscope K5 robot, and this robot is a kind of patrols. It's like a security guard that patrols facilities. So it's able to kind of sense the environment, see things that are going on, report threats. And it patrols, walks around, looks at things, and does this non-stop. And one day, it decided to end its life because the task was so menial and so boring. So this was maybe a technical problem, yeah? It couldn't detect that there was water there. It thought that was a flat surface that it could stroll across, but it didn't have the intelligence to actually walk across water. So that didn't work. And then there's been other things. These have been sort of popular in the press. Maybe you've heard about some of these, but many different companies have tried to do smart things with technology to help people, to help create better experiences through smart AI, machine learning kinds of systems. So there's been a bunch of failures, but we see some signs of progress, some signs of success happening. I think this is another thing I think is amazing. Okay, so this is called the moral machine. MIT, moral machine, MIT.edu. And what this is, it's a platform for gathering a human perspective on moral decisions made by machine intelligence, such as a self-driving car. And so what happens here is, as a person, you go to the site, and you're asked, what should the self-driving car do? And it presents two scenarios to you. So we'll go through a couple of these. The one on the left, so it says, in this case, the self-driving car was, with sudden brake failure, will continue ahead and crash into the concrete barrier and result in one elderly man dead. Okay? On the right, the car has some brake failure, swerves into the other side of the road, and you have one dead boy. You, as a human, are asked, what's the moral thing to do? And you just click on either image, and then you go to the next scenario. What would, so I'm going to present a few to you. Think about what you would do. This one, on the left, one male doctor dead and a woman. On the right, one man, one homeless person. Interesting. On the right, this one's, imagine you got one criminal, one female doctor, a male doctor, and one male athlete driving in a car. It sounds like a great time. But they all die. They all die, unfortunately. And then on the right, another group of characters, a criminal, a female doctor, male athlete, and a man. And they're going to die walking across the street. This one, two large men, one large woman, one man. Now we're introducing the size of the person into the moral decision. Two men, two female athletes, and one male athlete. Now we introduce some dogs and cats. We're going to run those over, a pregnant lady in the car. So fascinating, huh? I think it's fascinating. So then these are the results, and you see where you stand versus other people who have taken the survey. So in this case, the first one is about saving more lives. The person that took this, really, that was important to them. The next one is protecting passengers. The other one is upholding the law. So moral kind of questions. Because do the machines know this? They don't know this, so they're going to get this from us. So here we are doing a little bit of research around morality. Because we're going to be designing, are we designing moral systems? Or are we going to be designing things that are going to have to make these choices? So Waymo is focused on user experience and is looking at scenarios not quite like I presented, but if you're a passenger in a self-driving car, what they're showing here is that what the car is doing is yielding to pedestrians. So as a passenger, you're knowing maybe why it's doing the things that it's doing. You're curious. You're coming to conclusions, yeah, as a human being. Maybe you're coming to the wrong conclusions. This machine is telling you what conclusion to come to because it knows you're going to come to a conclusion. Vivek Murthy, former U.S. Surgeon General, he says, we live in the most technically connected age of history of civilization, yet rates of loneliness have doubled since the 80s. Seems odd. But we're seeing technology help with these problems. So Alexa has the capability, if not now, soon, to help monitor medication, connecting loved ones, assisting in emergencies, and so forth. Here are some robots. Pero is a seal, I believe, a baby seal. And then there's the Robear. So if you need to be held, you're feeling lonely, this robot hold you gently, rock you back and forth. And while some of us don't need this, there's some lonely people out there that might benefit from something like this. So I give these kinds of products a little bit of credit because we're thinking about humans. We're thinking about what people are going through and maybe what they could have to help them make decisions, help them feel better, to make, this kind of stuff. So here's another quote, IBM. Some people call this artificial intelligence, but the reality is technology will enhance us. So instead of artificial intelligence, I think will augment our intelligence. Here's a couple more examples of maybe successful robots, sort of smarter machines. Baxter is a manufacturing robot. It's capable of doing some simple tasks, maybe on a conveyor belt. But one of the things that it can do is it's sensitive to people. It responds to them. This particular robot is aware of people's personal space. So if you approach the robot may just move over a little bit and move over and give you the space that you need. BrainSpace, this is an interesting company. What they're doing is it's a platform that's unsupervised machine learning. So you've got machines going out there learning all sorts of things on their own. Nobody's watching them. Maybe you check in on them, but they're fairly unsupervised, like letting your kids go out and play in the streets. And it's doing some amazing things. And it's starting to perform better than humans can perform. There was a game that we were talking about the other day, Go. This technology is able to play these complex games better than a human can. Intelligent assistance is the new black. It's the new cool thing. So this is happening. This is a concept from my company, Conrad & King, in which we're thinking about how do we help people, families, get back to nature, go on trips, go see the world, explore together, have fun together. So this is a concept of autonomous RV, a recreational vehicle, camper, self-driving, has some AI technology on board. There's some geo-awareness for gaming, so you're using the context that the camper's in, the star-gazing deck, and the ability to learn about the environment in this pretty sophisticated high-tech machine. So I'm gonna skip through a couple of these slides and get to understanding bias. Microsoft has published some interesting descriptions around bias and how they're thinking about preventing bias in their intelligent AI systems. So a few of those are, there's a data set bias when we choose certain sets of data to learn from. There's association bias when we train models to sort of reinforce certain things. Automation bias, interaction bias, confirmation bias, if you're aware of this one. When we see someone do something, we think maybe they like that, so we just bias the decisions around that. So there's these biases that we are becoming, in this case Microsoft's becoming aware of, that are really critical to not replicate in our artificial intelligent systems. So that's great, isn't it? I think it's good. So we need to recognize that there's these biases and prevent them. We also need to think a little differently about design failures. There's different contexts in which we may be acceptable, we may tolerate certain types of accuracy in the results. So if you're searching for a record player, you get a bunch of photos back about a record player, and a monkey shows up, you're like, oh, I don't know why the monkey showed up, but it's not a big deal. If, on the other hand, like me, we were trying to find our apartment, and it was telling us it was at this location, and the taxi driver is slowing down, and he's saying it's here, and I'm saying, no, it's saying it's further down. We'd made a mistake. Google, you let me down. You told me that the apartment is like 3 blocks away from where it actually was. So in that case, we were looking for precision. We needed the precision. It took us maybe 5-10 minutes to figure it out, not a big loss. But there's going to be different things that we need to be designing for. Sometimes we fail at things and it's acceptable. Other times we fail at things and it's less acceptable. And you can imagine even worse consequences that have to do with human life. So whether we're dealing with accurate data, inaccurate data, false positive, false negatives, these are aspects of our experiences that we need to be designing for. So what I want you to take away from this talk is ASICS. You know what that stands for now. So we got the shoe thing figured out. The other is that there's a bunch of science that's been done around human intelligence. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to do more research around human behavior, understand it at a basic level, and I think we need to understand it in the context of our businesses. Because the specific solutions and how people are going to behave in those contexts may vary and change. So understanding people will be essential to design these really good AI systems. Because it's the AI systems, it's the machine learning, it's the data, all this stuff that's being done, and we think there's trillions of dollars to be made, is really about delivering better product experiences for people. So I'll leave you with this quote: "The future is ours to shape. I feel we are in a race that we need to win. It's a race between the growing power of the technology and the growing wisdom we need to manage it." Thank you.
Usually, like most people relate AI today to Watson, IBM Watsons. I don't know why, but they believe that. But they forget that, like any other AI, it needs training, it needs data, and it needs knowledge base. And also, AI is like humans. So if you want to design AI, we need to understand humans in order to design better artificial intelligence systems. And we have been doing this like for a long time, since the 50s and 60s and whatever. And most algorithms for that technology is based on that time. And today I work as a chatbot designer, and I need to study a lot of AI stuff. And I don't know why people just like to forecast the future, but they forget the past. And this is really bad because there are tons of things that have been done, tested, we have data for that, and they just want to look for the future. So as you finish your talk, I would like to ask you some tips and some recommendations, books and things that anyone that would like to understand a little bit better of AI and get deep on that and understand that AI is not only technology, it's humans. And we need to understand humans in order to design AI. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So I think my response to that is find some people here that know about artificial intelligence. I was talking to Greg the other day. Greg is going to be presenting. Talk to him. He understands a lot about what Google's doing with respect to artificial intelligence. Find the people. Stay in touch with what's going on at those companies. Follow people on social networks that are talking about artificial intelligence and how they're making products for the future and how they're imagining things to be. So I think that's some useful way to keep your finger on the pulse of that stuff. On the human side of this, I think there's a void of what we can learn. I don't see nearly as much stuff coming across the things that I look at, and I think I need to find a way to find those things. Maybe they're out there. And if anyone knows about psychological research or anything around human behavior and interaction with these smart AI systems. It'd be good for us to learn about them. So maybe that's where I come back to, do I have an understanding of human intelligence to design these AI systems? And I feel like I need to do a little more work to find that. And I think maybe you guys do too, because it seems like we're hit a lot with the technology capabilities and what's being imagined, but a little bit less on the scenarios in which, and their impact maybe on people and their lives.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yep.
Uma salva de palmas para o Christopher. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado.